Hi, I'm Billy Mitchell with FedScoop TV. Today I'm here with Frank Konieczny, the CTO of the Air Force. How are you, Frank?
Fine, how you doing?
Doing great. It's great to have you here today. And
Right.
we want to talk about a couple different things. Reimagining the business of government, IT modernization are among them. So why don't we start with that latter one right there, IT modernization. And Frank, what are some of the major barriers agencies are facing in modernizing their IT systems?
Well, I think there's several ones. I mean, first of all, for us in particular, it's looking at how we're going to determine what applications we actually want to move and how we're going to do that. But one of the bigger ones is the data that's associated with those applications and how we're going to enterprise-wide manage data. I mean, that's been a big deal with us right now, is how we're going to look at the data within the Air Force and figure out what's authoritative and what's not.
Yeah. So Frank, how can CIOs better enable their teams to transform to be a more digital operation, if you will?
This is kind of hard. First of all, there's a culture change that you have to do, because most of us are stuck in an old culture. It's also how can you introduce new equipment faster. I mean, usually the procurement cycle is pretty bad. And so when we talk about innovation, we want to be able to do it quickly. So a lot of times we need to do pilots. We need to do pilots with industry, and we have industry partners, and that's probably the easiest way to start looking at innovation, because it gets us used to how to do this in a different kind of frame of reference. And so I think that's probably the fastest way. Otherwise, you really have to change culture for people, and that takes a long time.
Yeah. And so you mentioned culture, you talked a lot about culture, but what about from the systems perspective? Are there certain specific systems that are maybe most poised for modernization?
Sure. There's some out there right now. I mean, a lot of times we talk about how you do lift and shift of applications. If they're web-based already, it's probably easier to do those. But you have to look at it from the viewpoint of also the procurement cycle, because we don't actually develop applications ourselves. Well, most of them are not developed ourselves. We usually have system integrators do the work, and the question is when is the best time to actually move an application based upon your contract you have already established. And then the question is, of course, where are you going to move it to?
Yeah.
And that rolls into an engineering analysis. It also involves an analysis of what data you have out there and who's actually accessing those data from across the rest of the Air Force.
Yeah. So let's kind of pivot a little bit and talk a little bit about the idea of reimagining the way federal agencies are doing business. So are there ways that Air Force right now is reimagining the way they do business?
Well, we do two things. I mean, we're trying to do the data, which is something that we haven't never done before, across the Air Force, trying to coordinate all data and be able to provide it to the user when they want it. Now, when we say that, it applies lots of things. It applies the mobility aspect to this, which is something brand new, that we have to figure out how to do this, how to authenticate those people in a mobile platform, if you will, which involves multi-factor authentication. It also involves looking at what identity systems we're going to use. We've developed which we call an enterprise low security system, which is a dynamic ABAC system. And we're going to be using that associated with a multi-factor identification to determine what data they should have. But also we have to look at the levels of the data that we're going to provide to the user environment, because we want to geofence some stuff as well as control it wherever they will get the data.
Are there any other kind of emerging technologies that play into that, like cloud, big data, or mobile computing?
Mobile computing is a big deal. I mean, we've looked at blockchain already to control some of the data flows already, to do audit some of the data flows. We've looked at auto provisioning of the applications out there in a secure environment with containers and things. So there's lots of things that are playing into doing this, especially when we talk about mobility. It's going to be, maybe you guys understand the Air Force is a global enterprise.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about mobility, we want to be able to do it from anywhere, which means we have to have a way of authenticating people anywhere and being able to get to the data they need.
Sure. And that kind of plays into the personnel aspect of it in the workforce as people become more mobile and the systems are kind of disparate and spread out. Are there any apps or tools or any other ways that you guys kind of better enable your workforce?
Yeah, because what we're trying to do is part of our philosophy when we're doing dynamic ABAC controls is to actually make sure that they get the applications that they need right away. So when they come in, we say, okay, if you're authenticated for an application or authorized to get this application, we're going to ship it to your mobile device.
Yeah.
So they don't have to actually do any work anymore.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the issues is I'm searching for this, I can never find it. Or even when they're doing it on the desktop, it's a question of, okay, what should I be having to do and how easy it is? And we want to provide that all to them right away.
Yeah. And you've mentioned security a couple of times, most recently right there, but are there any other ways that cybersecurity kind of plays into this reimagination of the business?
Oh, sure. Because a lot of things, like we're talking about security within containers for the applications, we're also part of the attribute-based access control system actually records everything that's happening.
Yep.
And so if you are not authorized to get something, it records it, sends it back to our sort of cybersecurity people and say, hey, guess this guy tried 3 times and he isn't getting it. Maybe you should do something about it.
Yeah.
So we're looking at it from the insider threat viewpoint, and eventually we're going to do it on all data. So all non-structured data, which is documents and everything else, will have the same type of access control levels across it, and will actually increase the effectiveness of insider threat analysis now.
Yeah, great, Frank. I appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you.
I'm Billy Mitchell with FedScoop TV. Thanks for watching.